Okay, let's get started. Hello and welcome. During this web training, the National Brain Tumor Society Public Policy and Advocacy staff will prepare you for in-person meetings with your members of Congress when they travel back to their home states from Washington, D.C. throughout the year for in-district work. My name is Casey Troy, and I'm the Research and Advocacy Manager here at the National Brain Tumor Society. Joining me on this web training are my colleagues Lisa Peabody, our Public Policy Associate, and Lanie Titus-Samant, our Director of Advocacy. I have just a couple of housekeeping items to go through before we begin. To minimize background noise, we will have all webinar participants muted. However, we do want this to be an interactive training, so please ask any questions you may have by utilizing the chat feature on your Zoom screen. Lanie is sending a chat now. It should have just popped up on your screen. And that will show you where to look for the chat feature. Feel free to ask questions throughout the training, and we will do our best to answer all the questions following the main presentation during our Q&A session. If your question is not answered during the webinar, please email us at advocacy@braintumor.org. We will also be recording this training, so it'll be accessible online within a handful of days. We'll also email the link in a follow-up email to all of our advocates so you can access this again in the future. Finally, if you haven't already, it might be helpful if you take some time to watch the 2 web trainings we've produced in this educational series prior to this web training. The first is Advocacy 101, Your Story Matters, which provides the basics to public policy advocacy and why it's important for the brain tumor community. And the second is Building Bridges, How Your Relationships Make a Difference, which provides a guide to building and maintaining a working relationship with your members of Congress. Along with this web training, these will prepare you to effectively advocate for the brain tumor community throughout the year. All right, let's jump in. Steps for in-district meetings. These are the basic steps you should follow when preparing for an in-district face-to-face meeting with your member of Congress, starting with scheduling the meeting. As a note, everything we're discussing today, you'll find detailed instructions for in the in-district meeting toolkit on our website. Lanie will chat the link to that webpage now, and we'll also include the link to that page when publishing this webinar. So for scheduling the meetings, first, you can find your members of Congress online and call the district office closest to your home to schedule a meeting. We do have a script available in the toolkit I mentioned a moment ago. So if you can schedule a meeting over the phone, that's great. You may need to utilize an online scheduling request form or schedule through email. Simply follow the instructions provided to you by the office when you make that initial phone call. We do suggest that you schedule the meeting for a time that works best for you. Then you can invite your family members and friends to join you in the meeting. We'd also love to be able to invite other members of the brain tumor community who live in your area. So just send us an email at advocacy@braintumor.org to let us know you've scheduled the meeting, and we'll work together to get the word out. It may take some perseverance to get your meeting scheduled. You might have to follow up with the office a couple of times. Stick with it. This is a great opportunity to introduce yourself in person and reinforce the message you and your other advocates have been sending to your members of Congress throughout the year. For meeting preparation, before your meeting, you'll want to visit the in-district meeting toolkit I mentioned above a few minutes ago. There you will find just a few documents to print and bring with you to the meeting. We suggest you bring information sheets on our current legislative asks, a state-specific fact sheet, talking points, and a meeting prep form that you'll be, if you'll be attending this meeting with others. This will help plan for who will say what once you're in the meeting. You also want to dress professionally. Business casual to business dress is fine. We suggest wearing slacks or a skirt and a button-down shirt or something similar. No jeans, shorts, or sandals. This is a professional relationship, and we want to reinforce that in everything we do. Finally, please plan to arrive to the office 10 to 15 minutes early. You'll want to give yourself some buffer time and find the office and check in with the office staffer a few minutes early before your meeting time. If you're attending along with a group, it's also a good idea to meet at a nearby coffee shop or in the lobby or down the hall of the building if possible, even earlier to review your plans for the meeting. So for the role of the brain tumor advocate, your members of Congress need to hear from you as members of the brain tumor community because you are the experts. You know the unique challenges that face the brain tumor community, and your members of Congress need to learn from you what matters to their constituency and why. Share your unique experience with your members of Congress so they can take that knowledge with them as they make decisions in Washington, D.C. that affect you back home. Speaking of back home, your role is to make a personal and local connection. We hear time and again from members and their staffers that personal stories from constituents are incredibly impactful to our members of Congress, and that these stories help guide decisions being made on your behalf. Brain tumor advocates build working relationships with Congress and are the source of information on our policy agenda. We'll provide you with the tools you need to succeed, including brain tumor facts and public policy briefs on matters that affect the brain tumor community, and you bring your own experience and speak for the brain tumor community on a personal level. Every interaction with a member of Congress or their staff is an opportunity to cement your role as a collaborative partner who provides expertise as a member of the brain tumor community, who serves as a source of information, and who is professional, positive, and persistent in the goal of improving the lives of brain tumor patients now and in the future. With that, I would like to introduce my colleague, Lisa Peabody, the Public Policy Associate here at the National Brain Tumor Society. Lisa will prepare you to share your unique experience with your members of Congress in your in-district meetings.
Thank you, Casey. That's a great introduction on how to get a meeting and what to do to get ready for the meeting. So let me talk about your story, which is your unique experience. So as we said, in order to really connect with this office, you need to share why you're there and what's important to you through your story. I highly recommend that you time it and practice it several times. It just takes time to get the story to be really concise and to make sense and to get the language in your mouth. And it should be about 2 to 3 minutes. And throughout that story, you want to share about what happened to you and what is your personal connection to brain tumors. You can connect with this member. So not only do I work for the National Brain Tumor Society, but I also have a personal story. So I'm going to give you an example of how you might tell your story, 2 to 3 minutes. You can just get a sense of how it works. So just pretend like you are the member of Congress. Hi, my name is Lisa Peabody, and I am local. I live in Bethesda, Maryland. In 2004, my 13-month-old daughter, Caroline, was diagnosed with a low-grade glioma, a brain tumor that grows slowly. It's a really hopeful kind of diagnosis in the brain tumor space. And, often you attack that type of diagnosis with surgery. So with Caroline, that was the first approach. But because Caroline's tumor was in a very, very precarious place, it was in the brain stem, just that little stem that kind of feeds into your nervous system. The doctor, Dr. Packer at Children's Hospital, nobody on that staff would take on her case as a surgical case. You might remember the name Dr. Ben Carson. He ran for president, and in 2004, he was really the internationally renowned surgeon for his techniques in neurosurgery. And we even worked with him on a consult, and even Dr. Carson wouldn't remove her tumor. So with brain tumors, we follow the same standard of care that you do with cancer. Surgery is our first option, and with that off the table, we moved to chemotherapy, kind of the poisoning of the tumor. But chemotherapy takes several months, and within about 10 days of Caroline's diagnosis, her tumor grew, her low-grade tumor grew. And there's just no space when you have a brain tumor. It's inside a confined area. So as soon as it started to grow, she became worse and she got much sicker. So after 10 days, we were sort of out of time for the time it takes for chemo, and so we went to the third line of defense, the other standard of care, which is radiation. And radiation always carries the risk of damaging the surrounding tissue. It's a tough protocol for brain tumor patients, but it is on the table. And so she joined a a clinical trial at the National Institutes of Health here in Bethesda, the top clinical trial place in the country. And the irradiation actually ended up damaging the surrounding tissue too severely. And 63 days after she had been diagnosed, she passed away. So it was actually the radiation, it was the protocol that took her life. The tumor would have taken it anyway, but it's just so clear how we haven't, that our disease is still missing some really viable and life-saving treatments. So with that story, I was able to share with the member of Congress my story quickly and include some of the challenges of a brain tumor diagnosis and just kind of share some of what gets in the way of treatment. So I looked at three things that I often bring up with congressional members. I talk about surgery and how surgery, as I said, is not always a viable option. Sometimes tumors are not accessible. And even with surgery, we know sometimes there's still tumor left. And then we look at chemo, and chemo takes a long time. And we also have that issue that there are only 4 chemos and that they have to cross the blood-brain barrier. And many agents don't cross the blood-brain barrier. And we're always looking for agents that cross the blood-brain barrier, but then protect the sensitivities of the brain. And finally, there's radiation, which is often a successful treatment, but comes sometimes with long-time health issues. So I'm hoping you'll be able to kind of put those pieces, or at least some of those pieces, in your story, and that should help educate your member as well as share your personal connection. So let me introduce Lanie Titus Samant, and she's our Director of Advocacy, and she'll move on to the next part of our webinar. Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks so much for sharing your story and showing that example. So thank you so much for joining us today. As I just said, Lisa and Casey went over why it's so important for you to have these meetings and share your stories and unique experiences with your members of Congress. But now we want to walk through what it would actually be like to have a meeting with your member of Congress or their staff. What will the actual choreography of the meeting be? So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll talk about what happens when you arrive at the meeting. So as Casey mentioned, you want to give yourself a little extra time, and before you get there, just make note of the person you'll be meeting with. They would have given you a name when you called or set it up via email. So make note of that person's name so that when you arrive at the office, you can announce your arrival, whether it's you or a group of you who are attending. Let them know that you're there and you're part of the National Brain Tumor Society, and then ask for the person that you'll be meeting with. Sometimes offices might have a variety of staff members, so it's always easier and will streamline things if you can just give the name of the person that you're going to be meeting with. So then you'll wait, and then you'll move into having the staffer or the member of Congress to come out and greet you. So whether you're meeting with a member of Congress or their staffer, chances are a staff person will come out either way, and they'll bring you to the meeting location. So every district office for a member of Congress is different. Some of them may be very large, some very small. Some of them may have a lot of activity going on, and others may be very quiet on the day you go for your meeting. But just be aware that some might be a nice conference room, like the look of this meeting that from constituents that we have meeting with their member of Congress here. Others might be really small, or you might actually just be meeting in the reception area if they don't have a very large office. So just be aware. That doesn't mean the meeting isn't important. It just speaks to their space in that office. So once you sit down, everyone's settled in, you can introduce yourselves. And a key piece of this, first of all, thanking the staffer for their time. Of course, it is part of their job to meet with constituents like you and hear your concerns, but they do have many demands on their time. So thanking them and showing your appreciation for the meeting is always a good way to start off the meeting. And then introducing everyone. And here is where you want to make sure to note what city or town from the district, or if you live in a very large city, what neighborhood in that city you live in. That's going to start to build those connections and remind those people or teach those people, those staffers, something more about you. So they'll start to identify you with that city or town and remember that. So as we said before, members of Congress think locally and think about their districts a lot. So making that connection to where you're from in the district is really important. You could even add in, if you work somewhere within the district as well, you could add that in. And then we're going to move from the introductions into the substance of the meeting. So as Lisa said, you'll want to share your story, and sharing your story is really where you make those true connections that will build the relationship with the staffer or the member of Congress. It will also bring awareness to brain tumors and why we're advocating for change in Congress to benefit the brain tumor community. So Lisa shared her story with you, and I'd like to share my story as well, just to give you another example of how this is done and different connections you can make through your very brief story. So like Lisa, although I'm a staff member at NBTS, I'm also personally affected by brain tumors. So this is what I would say if I were walking into a meeting with my member of Congress or their staff. So I would say, my name is Lanie Titus Summit, and I'm from Marblehead, and my dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was in my early 20s. He was a police officer in Nahant, and he had just retired when he started experiencing double vision. So my dad lived 10 years with his brain tumor before passing away in 2009, which is actually a long time for someone with a brain tumor. So during that time, he went through surgery and multiple rounds of radiation as the tumor kept recurring. We began to see over the years many effects of the radiation the more he was exposed to it, including hearing loss. He lost hearing entirely in one of his ears. And so that's why I'm here advocating, because I'm a strong believer in the need for more medical research. The 4 treatments options available for brain tumor patients just are not enough right now to prolong survival, but also they come with many negative side effects. So we really need to do more to research brain tumors and find better treatments so that people living with brain tumors can live longer and also live better during that time. So that's an example of my story. It's really brief. Of course, there are a million more things I could say about my story in those 10 years and more I could say about my dad. But that's just a quick sample of what I could say. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things I did during that story to give you some ideas of ways you could relate to the staff member or to making that connection with them. So in the story, I mentioned that I was in my early 20s when my dad was diagnosed. So the reason I did that, not that it matters really to the story, but it matters because many members of Congress, their staff, are in their early 20s or mid 20s. So to them, that's a relatable fact. So they can think, oh, wow, at this point in my life, this, something like this could happen to me. So that's something that just makes that little connection with the staff member. I also mentioned that my dad was a police officer in Nahant, which if I were meeting with my member of Congress, that would be in their district. So that's just another little identifier to bring in the district and bring in that further connection so that maybe when they think about Nahant, they think, oh, this woman's dad was a police officer there and then he got a brain tumor. Just building that and, bringing depth to your story so that they make those further connections. And then the final thing I'd done was to talk about the radiation and the lack of treatment options for people with brain tumors. That goes towards our point of why we need more medical research funding as authorized through Congress so that we can get better treatments and not have to subject our patients to treatments that can be damaging in other ways. Now, of course, your story, if you're doing this for the first time, you may not be able to make all of those connections and make that work with your story, but just some different things to keep in mind as you're building your framework and as you're practicing your story when you prepare for your meetings. Just some things to think of. Can you connect with the staff person? Can you make it local connection as part of it? As Lisa said during her story, her daughter was treated at NIH, which would be in her congressman's district. So little things like that can help you further those connections. And those details will be helpful so that they'll remember you as they correspond with you in the coming months and years. So this is where you can also share some brain tumor facts. As I said during my story, there are 4 treatment options currently approved by the FDA for brain tumors. But as Casey was saying, on our website, we do have those state-specific fact sheets that you could take with you and share some of those, pull out some of those details that feel the most important to you or even the most relevant to your story, just to give them some background on brain tumors and the unique challenges that go along with them. So next we can go to some meeting tips that we can give you for when you're having your meeting. As I said before, introducing yourself as a group of volunteers with the National Brain Tumor Society or as a volunteer with the National Brain Tumor Society. This further connects you to the brain tumor cause, lets them know that you're part of a larger group of advocates across the state and across the country. So that would be nice to have that identifying feature as well. As we've said, relate the issue to home and using those state-specific sheets to let them know how many people in their state are affected by brain tumors. Staying focused on your message is important as well. Of course, members of Congress can affect change at all different levels and on all different subject matters. So you may have something else you're really interested in that you want to talk to your member of Congress about. We just ask that if you want to do that, just set up a separate meeting or do that at a different time, because it's important to stay focused on making the connection to brain tumors and your cause and the policy matters that we're interested in during this meeting. And then never be afraid to say that you don't know the answer. If they ask you a question about something, you can always get back to them if they need additional information, as well as connecting them with NBTS staff. And the don'ts for advocating with Congress. Whether or not you agree with your member of Congress politically, and even if you're on the same side as them politically or have differing opinions, just don't be partisan. We want to just keep it clear and focused on the purpose of the meeting and on connecting to the brain tumor community. So just avoid any partisan or political conversations. And then don't argue. It's okay to say if you have a difference of opinion, if they're saying they're not going to support something you're advocating for, it's okay to say you don't agree with that and to ask them to support it. But don't get into any arguments or burn any bridges with members of Congress. Many times there's something they might not agree on today, but maybe there's something later down the line that we will work together on. So it's always good to keep those relationships positive and open as we move forward. So asking for support. On the website, you'll find links to our public policy issue briefs on the issues that are important to the brain tumor community and things we're asking Congress to support. You will have different levels of comfort in talking about things. So if this is something that's new to you, what you can do is just print out those public policy issue briefs and bring them to the meeting with you. You don't have to worry about knowing the exact details or the exact numbers that we want research funding at, but you can just bring those documents with you and give them to the staffer or the member of Congress and just say we'd like their support. If they have more specific questions, you can let them know you'll get back to them and connect them to us, to advocacy@braintumor.org, and we can follow up with specific questions. But at the end of the day, a lot of them probably will be somewhat familiar with these asks anyway, so just giving the issue brief may be enough in those situations. If you're someone who perhaps has attended Head to the Hill in the past, or you take part regularly in all of our action alerts and feel comfortable talking about either of the policy asks, then feel free to do so. You can go into further detail, talk about why they're important, reference the issue briefs as you discuss them, and then ask for the member of Congress to support those items. So either way, it's completely fine and will be great. It's just really up to your level of comfort in talking about those things. But at the very least, you'll just print out those documents and bring them with you to the meeting. Okay. So now most of the meeting has taken place. You've talked about your story. You've given information on the policy ask. So now you need to plan your exit strategy. So you'll wrap up the meeting and you can thank them for their time and for holding the meeting with you. Take a picture. This is an important piece that you want to make sure to document this and get a great picture of you, or if it's more than you, you and your group, with the staffer or the member of Congress. As this picture is here, a lot of times people will do it around the sign that says the name of the member of Congress. It's great to just document that, and so that we can later share it. And then get their business cards. As we said before, this is the beginning or continuation of a relationship with this office. So make sure to have their contact information available to you. So what will you do with those things? That's where we lead to following up from the meeting. So once the meeting is over, then you're going to want to email a thank you to the staff person. This is important because you can make that connection, have that email chain started so that if something, say in a month or in a few weeks, you get an action alert from us at NBTS asking you to email your member of Congress about something. What you can do is copy and paste that message into an email with the staff person and continue that conversation and continue asking for their support. So it's great to just start off that relationship following the meeting and not let that, that chance to continue an interaction go by. And then you can share pictures and experiences via social media. So you can tag your members of Congress, you can post them to NBTS's accounts. And currently, for the August recess time period that we're in right now, at the time of this webinar, then we have an event page where people can go and share their experience and their pictures. So please feel free to go ahead and post in there after you have your meeting. And then let us know about your experience and share your pictures with us at advocacy@braintumor.org. This is also a great way to share with us what the discussion was, give us tips because we track all of these things, whether your member of Congress said they would support the policy items, if they mentioned a connection to the brain tumor community. It allows us to continue to track that and see where our support is in Congress, and will give us a chance to follow up with that office if you need us to. Okay, so that is sort of the quick run through of what a meeting with your member of Congress in the district would look like. So now if anyone has questions, please feel free to chat those to us. I don't see any so far. So if you do have questions and don't get a chance to ask them today, or if you start to go ahead and schedule your meeting or you're planning for the meeting and telling your story, please feel free to reach out to us at advocacy@braintumor.org. We're always happy to have a one-on-one conversation to help you prepare and get you ready for your meeting so that you're completely comfortable when you walk into the door and sit down with your member of Congress or their staff. Okay, so unless there's any other questions, then I'm going to just thank everyone for joining us. We wish you the best of luck in setting up and having your meetings, and please keep us posted on how they're going. We know you're going to do a great job.